Now let's finally talk about how do we do this in-text citation thing. Well, simply put, whenever you use somebody else's words or ideas, you need to give two pieces of information. Who said it, and where did they say it? So, in MLA, they make this actually fairly simple comparative to other styles. To answer who said it, you simply give the last name of the author, right? Now, the reason for this is so that people can easily go to your works cited page and find more information if they want to look up that book. If you have two authors with the same last name, then you have to do some more clarification, usually involving giving the name of the book to clarify. Likewise, if you have an author and you use two different books, then you're going to want to clarify which book and use the book name to clarify this book of these 2 or 3 books that I cited was where this quote came from. And so next you have the question of where, and we're going to be using page numbers. Because the page numbers are specific to that individual quote, so that information can't be found in your works cited page. It's only found in the text itself when you make the quotation or the paraphrase. You'll use the page numbers. Now there's a few other instances that we'll talk about here. Like number 1 about sacred texts. Well, do you just say God? Well, atheists and agnostics and Buddhists and Muslims, and right, there's disagreement. And so MLA basically says don't put God as the author. Just in your works cited page, just put the book name. You know, the name of the version, so New International Standard Bible, or right, the New International Version, right? You put that as the front there, and in your text you would put New International Version, and you'd give the book 2 Peter chapter 2, 3, right? And so you would kind of do a little bit different things with Bible quotation, other sacred texts, but generally the formula is last name of author, page number, in parentheses after the quotation. The only other exception to this rule, which many of you Bible scholars will end up using, is dictionary and encyclopedia entries. For those, you give the name of the article instead of the last name of the author, and then the page number where the quotation comes from. So those are 2 of the big exceptions, quoting the Bible and quoting articles and Bible dictionary entries. You want to give the name of that article instead of giving the author of the article. But let's look at some examples of how these play out, and you'll see how it's actually pretty simple to input this information into a paper. Here are 2 examples of a couple different ways to do this in-text citation. The top one here says, first we need to define what exegesis means. Quote, an exegesis is a thorough analytical study of a biblical passage, end quote, Stewart 1. Note in the parentheses here, we got our who and we got our where. Stewart is the author, and if you looked down in the works cited page, you could easily find Stewart's book, Old Testament Exegesis, and find this quote on page 1, and you'll be able to read the entire passage for yourself. Now, so with the bottom example, first we need to define what exegesis means. Dr. Douglas Stewart describes exegesis as a thorough analytical study of a biblical passage. 1. Notice in the parentheses we don't have the author listed because he's already listed in the sentence itself. MLA is flexible. So take note that Douglas Stewart was introduced as the author of the quote that was to follow. The information did not need to be repeated in the parentheses. As long as the information is clear, you do not have to repeat yourself. Now, note it's not good style, however, to move the page number outside the parentheses and put it in your text. Generally, you can leave that information into a parenthetical statement at the end. No one needs to know directly, unless they're curious, what page number it originally came from. So just be sure you're not moving that in and around. It's usually good just to keep that back on its own parenthetical statement. Now, there are some rules that may seem like, well, how does this apply for paraphrasing? Well, luckily the rules are pretty much exactly the same. Whenever you're done with your paraphrase, just like when you're done with your quote, you would put in parentheses the last name, if you had already stated it, and the page number that came from. So whether you're doing a direct quote or a paraphrase, you're going to want to do this each time you get information. You may find you have the same author, you got lots of information, maybe from two different sources in his book. Go ahead and give the page number for when you're done talking about one section of information, and then we continue with the second section, give a second one. There may be times you put multiple, where you might have Stewart 1:15. Page 1 and page 15 talks about these two topics, and I kind of merge those ideas together as my own work. The important thing is you're clear on how they can find where you got that information from. So MLA is very flexible in that. As long as you get the information in there and it's clear and it doesn't disrupt from the flow of your paper, you've done a great job. At first, in-text citation can seem pretty daunting, but ultimately you have to remember your primary goal. You want your readers to be able to locate the right source in the right place that you have referenced in your paper. If your works cited page is in order, you only need to give them the information necessary for them to find that source in your works cited page, like the author or sometimes the book name, as well as the page numbers of where in that book or article or blog, if they have location numbers, they can find that information. Ultimately, when in doubt, give more details and not less. If you see that you have made a definitive statement in your paper and that statement is not supported by your own logic and reasoning, you are likely basing it off of somebody else's statement and reasoning and thus on another source, which you, reader, might be unaware of. So, when you have a proofread of your paper, be on the lookout and double check your statements and see, did I base that on something I read previously and I understand it to be true and I assume my reader should assume that? Well, don't assume that. Go through and see if you can find where you got that information from. You might even find some of your information and assumptions are wrong. You need to do some more research. So understanding this will actually help make your papers more clear, more logical, and hopefully more truthful. So keep at it and keep practicing, and in-text citation will eventually become second nature. Good job making it through this long and grueling video on in-text citation and plagiarism. Thank you for continuing to educate yourself on how to better present your work and others' work properly. I know it can be hard, but keep on doing it. And if you have any questions about more details, there's more than I listed here. Be sure to put some comments down below. And as always, keep up the honest work.